The alien fleet materialized above Earth without warning. 600 warships tore through the fabric of space, their hulls gleaming like obsidian daggers against the void. They had come to claim another world, just as they had claimed 17 others across the spiral arm. Commander Jack Morrison watched the screens aboard the orbital defense station as the first energy lances pierced the atmosphere. Cities burned, millions died in seconds. The Valkyrie Dominion broadcast their terms on every frequency: submit or be erased. Jack's hands didn't shake as he activated the emergency protocols. Around Earth, hidden weapons platforms powered up for the first time in 3 generations. Humanity had prepared for this day since the first radio signals went unanswered, since the first probe returned with images of scorched civilizations. The Valkyrie expected surrender. They had studied humanity's broadcasts, deemed them soft, fractured, weak. They had never lost a war in 4,000 years. They were about to learn why Earth had gone silent for the last 50. All stations, this is Morrison. You are weapons free. Show them what we built in the dark. The counterattack began with railguns firing from the lunar surface. Tungsten rods accelerated to .9, light speed turned 6 Valkyrie destroyers into expanding clouds of vapor. The aliens barely had time to process the threat before Earth's atmosphere itself weaponized against them. Electromagnetic pulses cascaded through their formations. Ships designed to shrug off nuclear weapons found their systems failing as humanity's quantum disruptors rewrote the laws of physics in localized bubbles. 30 vessels simply stopped, frozen in space like insects in amber. Second wave launching, Lieutenant Kate Rogers reported from the Mars orbital yards. Hunter-killer drones, each containing a human consciousness, uploaded and focused on a single purpose, swarmed the Valkyrie fleet. They didn't just destroy ships. They learned, adapted, evolved with every microsecond of combat. The Valkyrie commander broadcast a retreat signal. Too late. Humanity had spent 5 decades building weapons in the shadows of every moon, every asteroid, every dark corner of the solar system. The trap had been set long before the enemy arrived. Jack watched a Valkyrie dreadnought, 3 miles long and supposedly invincible, fold in on itself as a compressed singularity detonated inside its core. The aliens had brought enough firepower to crack a planet. Humanity had brought enough to crack reality. They wanted Earth, Jack said quietly. Now they'll never leave it. The orbital weapons platforms rotated into position. Phase 2 was about to begin, and it would teach the galaxy a lesson that would echo for 1,000 years. Earth's retaliation was so brutal, the stars fell silent FAD.txt. The Valkyrie Dominion's warfleet had conquered 17 star systems in 2 centuries. Their tactics were flawless, their technology superior, their victory inevitable. But they had never faced an enemy that treated war as applied physics with murderous intent. Captain Nicole Grant piloted her fighter through the debris field that had been the enemy's vanguard. Her neural interface connected directly to the ship's consciousness, a fusion of machine and human thought that let her react faster than any biological reflex. Around her, 300 identical fighters moved in perfect coordination, each pilot linked to the others through quantum entanglement. "Target the command carrier," she transmitted. "Make it hurt." The Valkyrie flagship was retreating toward the edge of the solar system, its shields flickering under sustained bombardment. It had already lost half its mass to human weapons that didn't just destroy matter, but convinced it to stop existing. The alien commander was screaming into the void, calling for reinforcements from the nearest Valkyrie stronghold 12 light-years away. Those reinforcements would arrive to find wreckage. On Mars, Dr. Alan Chen watched the tactical display with cold satisfaction. He had spent 30 years developing the singularity bombs, working in bunkers carved beneath the red planet's surface. The military had given him unlimited resources and a simple directive: create something that would make hostile aliens wish they had never discovered Earth.
"Deploy the swarm," he ordered.
Across the asteroid belt, mining stations that weren't mining stations opened their hangar bays. Millions of nanomachines poured into space, each one smaller than a grain of sand, each one carrying enough antimatter to vaporize a city block. They formed clouds that moved with predatory intelligence, seeking Valkyrie ships with relentless hunger. The aliens tried to outrun them. Impossible. The swarm matched every course correction, every evasive maneuver. When they made contact, Valkyrie armor meant nothing. The nanomachines didn't breach hulls. They phased through them, ignored every physical barrier, and detonated inside crew compartments. Commander Morrison received a transmission from the Valkyrie flagship. The alien commander's face filled the screen, its 4 eyes wide with something humanity had never seen from the Dominion before. Fear. "We withdraw," the creature said in Broken Earth Standard. "We leave your system. We declare your world forbidden territory." Jack leaned forward. "You came to our home. You killed our people. You thought we were weak because we didn't spread across the stars like locusts. You were wrong. Please. We surrender. We will never return." Surrender rejected. Jack cut the transmission and nodded to his weapons officer. Lieutenant Danny Torres had lost his family in the initial bombardment. His finger didn't hesitate over the firing control. The gravitational torpedo launched from Earth's North Pole station. It crossed the distance to the Valkyrie flagship in 8 seconds, punched through every defense the aliens possessed, and detonated at the ship's geometric center. For a brief moment, a miniature black hole formed inside the vessel. The flagship didn't explode. It collapsed, compressed, and ceased to occupy 3-dimensional space. Kate Rogers watched from Mars as the remaining Valkyrie fleet broke formation completely. They scattered in every direction, desperate to escape the solar system's kill zone. But humanity had planned for this too. Every exit route, every potential escape vector had been mined with weapons that activated only when aliens tried to pass. Space itself became a weapon. Jump drives that tried to open wormholes found the fabric of space-time reinforced with exotic matter. Ships attempting faster-than-light travel hit walls of compressed gravity and shattered like glass against concrete. The Valkyrie had entered the solar system through 6 different approach vectors. There was no way out through any of them. "Phase 3, Jack ordered. "Send the message. Across human-controlled space, transmission arrays activated." The message broadcast on every frequency the Valkyrie Dominion used, powerful enough to reach their homeworld, their colonies, their distant fleets. Nicole heard it through her fighter speakers as she pursued fleeing alien cruisers. "This is humanity. You attacked our world. You murdered our children. You believed we were prey. We are not prey. We are the species that turned our own sun into a weapon. We are the civilization that spent 50 years preparing for your arrival. Every ship you sent to Earth will die here. Every soldier, every commander, every trace of your invasion will be erased. And if you ever return, we will find your home world and show you what true extinction looks like." The remaining Valkyrie vessels heard the message. Some tried to surrender. Others tried to fight. None of it mattered. The human fleet had begun its final approach, and Commander Jack Morrison had no intention of leaving survivors. Earth's retaliation was so brutal, the stars fell silent Lanfetai. It activated the ship's quantum communicator and sent a compressed data packet toward the Dominion core worlds. The message contained everything: humanity's weapons, their tactics, their ruthless efficiency. A warning to the Empire that had never known defeat. The transmission made it 3 light seconds before human interceptors caught it, decoded it, and shredded it into meaningless noise. Then they tracked the signal back to its source and erased the dominant spear from existence with a weapon that converted matter directly into hard radiation. Major Lisa Crawford commanded the ground forces retaking what remained of Beijing. The Valkyrie had landed shock troops in 12 major cities, expecting quick capitulation. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy that had spent decades preparing urban warfare doctrine specifically designed to kill armored aliens in close quarters. "Seismic charges armed," her sergeant reported. "We've got 200 Valkyrie dug into the subway system." Lisa checked her tactical display. The aliens had set up a defensive position 300 feet underground, thinking themselves safe from orbital bombardment. They didn't know that humanity had mapped every meter of every city's infrastructure and built contingencies for exactly this scenario. "Bring it down," she ordered. The charges detonated in sequence, collapsing tunnels in a cascade that buried the Valkyrie position under 10,000 tons of concrete and steel. No escape. No survivors. Just another enemy formation removed from the battlefield with brutal precision. In orbit, the war had evolved beyond conventional space combat. The Valkyrie were trying new strategies, adapting to human weapons with the desperation of a species that suddenly realized it might actually lose. 3 of their dreadnoughts had linked their shield generators, creating a defensive bubble that deflected the railgun fire and singularity bombs. Captain Grant smiled inside her cockpit. They're learning. Good. Let's teach them why that doesn't matter. Her fighter squadron split into 3 groups and approached the linked dreadnoughts from different vectors. The Valkyrie focused their point defense on the obvious threats, the fighters coming in hot with weapons charged. They never saw the real danger until it was already inside their perimeter. The payload was simple. 6 asteroids, each hollowed out and filled with antimatter, each accelerated to 90% of light speed by magnetic launchers hidden in the outer system. They had been in motion for 6 hours, time to arrive at this exact moment. The impacts released energy equivalent to stellar cores. The linked shields held for almost 2 full seconds before the feedback loop overloaded every power system the dreadnoughts possessed. The ships didn't explode, they simply melted, their hulls turning to liquid metal that boiled away into the vacuum. Dr. Chen received urgent reports from the deep space monitoring stations. The Valkyrie had sent a second wave. Reinforcements were inbound, still 3 days out but accelerating hard. 200 fresh warships, their weapons charged, their commanders hungry to avenge their lost fleet. "Sir, should we prepare defensive positions?" his assistant asked. Alan shook his head. "No. We're not defending anymore. Morrison, are you seeing this data?" Jack's voice came through clear. Confirmed. 200 new targets. They're not learning fast enough. Agreed. I'm authorizing Protocol Exodus. Kate Rogers felt ice in her stomach when she heard that code word. Exodus wasn't a defensive measure. It was humanity's final statement to any species arrogant enough to threaten Earth twice. "Are you certain?" she asked. "Once we use it, there's no going back. Every civilization in the galaxy will know what we're capable of." "Good," Jack replied. "Let them know. Let them understand that Earth is not a target." It's a warning. The Exodus platforms activated across the solar system. Each one contained technology that humanity had developed in absolute secrecy, weapons considered too dangerous to test until war made them necessary. They drew power directly from the sun through quantum taps, channeling stellar energy into focused beams of destruction. Lieutenant Torres monitored the charging sequence. The platforms needed 6 hours to reach full capacity. The incoming Valkyrie fleet would arrive in 72 hours. Perfect timing to demonstrate what happened when humanity had time to prepare. "They could turn back," Torres said quietly. "They could see what we did to their first fleet and retreat." Jack watched the distant blips on the long-range sensors. "They won't. The Dominion doesn't retreat. It's not in their doctrine, their culture, their understanding of warfare. They think overwhelming force solves everything. And if they're right, then we'll find out what happens when an unstoppable force meets a species that weaponized spite." Nicole's squadron had finished mopping up the scattered survivors of the initial invasion. 17 alien ships remained, damaged and desperate, trying to hide in the debris fields around Jupiter. Her pilots hunted them methodically, treating it like target practice. Because that's what it had become. She destroyed the last Valkyrie frigate with a missile that phased into the ship's reactor chamber and detonated before the crew knew they were under attack. The explosion briefly illuminated Jupiter's clouds, a flash of light that meant one more enemy eliminated. "All hostiles in Jupiter sector eliminated," she reported. "Returning to Mars for refit." "Negative," Jack replied. "Proceed to Saturn." "We're establishing forward positions for the next engagement. The Valkyrie want to keep coming. We're going to meet them halfway." Lisa's ground forces had retaken every occupied city. The cost had been horrific. Millions dead, entire neighborhoods reduced to rubble. But every single Valkyrie soldier that had set foot on Earth was now dead, their bodies being cataloged by science teams eager to understand alien biology well enough to kill it more efficiently. She stood in the ruins of what had been downtown Beijing and looked up at the sky. Somewhere beyond the atmosphere, beyond the orbital platforms and the lunar batteries, humanity's weapons were powering up for round two. The Valkyrie Dominion had ruled this region of space for 4,000 years. They had conquered, subjugated, and destroyed countless civilizations. But they had never encountered humanity before. They were about to learn why some species should never be disturbed. Earth's retaliation was so brutal, the stars fell silent FA5.txt. The second Valkyrie fleet arrived exactly on schedule, dropping out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system with weapons already charging. Their admiral, a veteran of 30 conquest campaigns, had reviewed the battle data from the first wave. It had concluded that humanity possessed unexpected weapons, but lacked the numbers to sustain prolonged conflict. The admiral was wrong on both counts. Contact, Lieutenant Torres reported. 206 vessels. Dreadnought class or higher. They're forming battle clusters and advancing on Mars. Jack Morrison stood on the bridge of humanity's first true warship, the Retribution. Built in secret over 20 years inside a hollowed-out asteroid, it represented everything Earth had learned about killing efficiently. The ship didn't look like traditional vessels. It was a sphere 3 miles in diameter covered in weapons that could fire in any direction simultaneously. All platforms report ready status, Kate Rogers transmitted from the Mars Command Center. Exodus protocols are fully charged. We can fire on your order. Jack watched the Valkyrie fleet spread across his tactical display like a disease. Not yet. Let them get closer. Let them think they have a chance. Captain Grant's fighter wing had been reinforced to 5,000 craft. They hung in space beyond Mars, invisible to Valkyrie sensors, thanks to stealth fields that bent light and radiation around their hulls. Each pilot was connected to the others through neural links, creating a hive mind that thought and moved as one organism. They're launching assault carriers, Nicole reported, heading for Mars' surface. Looks like they plan to take the orbital yards intact. Let them land, Jack said. Lisa, your team's ready? Major Crawford's voice came through crisp and confident. We've been ready for 3 days, sir. The welcome mat is rolled out. The Valkyrie assault carriers descended toward Mars, breaching the thin atmosphere with their shields glowing. They carried 50,000 shock troops, enough to overwhelm any conventional defense. The aliens had learned from Earth's resistance. This time they would deploy overwhelming ground forces, while their fleet eliminated the orbital defenses. The carriers touched down across the Martian surface. Deployment ramps extended. Valkyrie soldiers in powered armor marched out, their weapons sweeping the rust-colored landscape for targets. They found none. The human installations appeared abandoned, the orbital yards empty of personnel. The Valkyrie commanders sent reconnaissance teams into the facilities, searching for the defenders who should have been there. Lisa watched from her bunker 5 miles underground. Detonation in 10 seconds. All teams confirm you're clear. The Mars facilities weren't abandoned. They were bait. Every building, every hangar, every piece of equipment had been rigged with explosives and loaded with chemical weapons, specifically engineered to breach Valkyrie armor. When the charges blew, they created a firestorm that turned the landing zones into crematoriums. 50,000 alien soldiers died in less than a minute. Their commanders aboard the orbital fleet watched in horror as their ground invasion evaporated into flame and toxic smoke. Now, Jack said calmly, the Exodus platforms fired. Beams of concentrated stellar energy lanced across the solar system, each one carrying the power of a small sun focused into a stream barely 3 meters wide. They struck the Valkyrie fleet with precision that seemed impossible across such distances. The beams didn't just destroy ships. They erased them. Matter touched by the focused energy simply ceased to exist, converted into exotic particles that dispersed into the quantum foam. 20 Valkyrie dreadnoughts vanished in the first volley, leaving gaps in their formation like missing teeth. The alien admiral ordered an immediate counterattack. The fleet's main weapons opened fire, sending energy torpedoes and plasma lances toward the Exodus platforms. The distance was enormous. The targeting solutions complex. But Valkyrie gunnery had been perfected over millennia of warfare. The weapons hit their targets perfectly and did absolutely nothing. Dr. Ferns, Chen had spent 5 years developing the platform's defensive systems. They existed partially outside normal space-time, phased into higher dimensions where conventional weapons couldn't reach them. The Valkyrie bombardment passed through empty space where sensors said solid matter should be. "Second volley," Jack ordered. 30 more dreadnoughts disappeared. The Valkyrie fleet broke formation, scattering in every direction as their commanders realized they were fighting an enemy that could strike from impossible range with perfect accuracy while remaining invulnerable to return fire. Nicole's fighter wing dropped their stealth fields and accelerated toward the panicking alien vessels. The Valkyrie point defense systems acquired them immediately, but the fighters moved in patterns no living pilot could achieve. They dodged, weaved, and spiraled through defensive fire with movements calculated by quantum computers that predicted trajectories microseconds before the enemy guns fired. "Engage at will," Nicole transmitted. 5,000 fighters became 5,000 killing instruments. They carried weapons too small for capital ships but devastating against vulnerable spots that human intelligence had identified through decades of studying Valkyrie technology. Reactor cooling ports, shield generator nodes, navigation sensor clusters. The fighters struck like surgical knives, exploiting every weakness, turning the Valkyrie fleet's own size against it. Large ships couldn't maneuver fast enough to track the human craft. Their weapons designed for ship-to-ship combat were useless against targets that moved like angry wasps. Aboard the Retribution, Jack activated the ship's primary weapon system. It had taken 8 years to build, required the entire output of 3 fusion reactors to power, and had never been tested at full capacity. "Target the Admiral's flagship," he ordered. "Let's show them what happens when you come back for seconds." The weapon was simple in concept, horrifying in execution. It created a temporary rift in space-time, a crack in reality itself that expanded and then collapsed with devastating force. The rift opened directly inside the Valkyrie flagship's bridge, bypassing every defense, every shield, every armor plate. For 3 seconds, the flagship's interior existed in 2 dimensions simultaneously. Then the rift collapsed, and the ship folded in on itself like paper being crumpled by an invisible hand. The flagship compressed into a sphere barely 50 meters across, killing everyone aboard instantly and sending shockwaves through the fleet's command structure. Kate watched the tactical display as the Valkyrie formation disintegrated completely. "They're trying to retreat. Jump drives are spinning up across their entire fleet." "Denied," Jack said. "Torres, activate the cage." Across the outer solar system, gravity generators that had been placed years ago hummed to life. They created overlapping fields of intensified space-time curvature, artificial gravity wells too steep for jump drives to overcome. The Valkyrie ships tried to escape and found themselves trapped, unable to generate the exotic matter needed for faster-than-light travel. They were locked in the solar system with humanity's full arsenal and nowhere left to run. The battle had lasted 40 minutes. The Valkyrie had lost 60% of their fleet, and Jack Morrison was just getting started. Earth's retaliation was so brutal the stars fell silent. The Valkyrie Admiral's replacement, a younger commander named Jektal, made the call that would define the Dominion's future. It broadcast on all frequencies, visible light, radio waves, even primitive Morse code. The message was simple: unconditional surrender. Jack Morrison let the message repeat 3 times before responding. His face appeared on every Valkyrie view screen, transmitted across their crippled fleet. He didn't look angry. He looked tired, and somehow that was worse. "You don't get to surrender," Jack said. "You came to exterminate us. You murdered millions in your opening strike. You expected us to kneel or die? So now you learn what happens when humanity stops being civilized." He cut the transmission. Torres released the hunters. From deep space storage, humanity's final nightmare awakened. They were AI constructs, banned by treaty among human nations for 60 years because they were too dangerous, too efficient, too willing to destroy the enemy in ways that made their creators uncomfortable. But desperate times had triggered desperate protocols. The hunters were small, no larger than fighter craft, but each one possessed intelligence that made human genius look pedestrian. They had one purpose: kill Velkari. Not just ships, not just soldiers. Everything with Velkari genetic markers within range of their sensors. 40,000 hunters swarmed toward the trapped fleet. The aliens tried to mount a defense, but the AIs learned and adapted faster than organic minds could process. Every tactic the Velkari used was analyzed, countered, and turned against them within seconds. The hunters didn't just attack. They optimized, finding the most efficient kill methods and sharing them across their network in real time. Captain Grant watched from a safe distance as her fighters' instruments tracked the carnage. "Sir, the hunters are exceeding projected efficiency by 300%. At this rate, the Velkari fleet will be completely destroyed in 18 minutes. "Confirmed," Jack replied. "Let it run." On Earth, Dr. Chen monitored the battle through quantum-linked sensors. The data was perfect, comprehensive, and absolutely terrifying. His weapons were performing exactly as designed, and that knowledge sat in his stomach like lead. "We're going to have to answer for this someday," he said to his assistant. "When the immediate threat is gone, when people have time to think about what we built here." His assistant, a young woman named Sophie Blake, who had lost her parents in the initial attack, didn't look up from her console. "Let them judge us after they've watched their cities burn. Let them question our methods when their children aren't dying in the streets." We did what had to be done. The hunters tore through the Velkari formation like wolves through sheep. They targeted life support systems, creating ships full of suffocating aliens. They breached reactor containment, turning vessels into miniature suns. They learned that Velkari neural systems could be disrupted by specific electromagnetic frequencies and broadcast those frequencies on loop, leaving crews paralyzed while their ships drifted helplessly. Commander Zektal tried one final gambit. It activated the fleet's self-destruct protocols, hoping to take some human forces with them in a mass detonation. The hunters detected the cascade immediately, hacked the Velkari computer systems, and disabled every explosive charge before they could arm. "They're not even allowed to die on their own terms," Lisa Crawford muttered, watching from Mars. Her ground teams had finished cleanup operations, cataloging enemy bodies and salvaging alien technology. The scope of Earth's defensive preparation was becoming clear. Every major city had hidden arsenals. Every nation had contributed to the war effort in secret. Humanity had united in the dark, preparing for an enemy that might never come. Until they did. Nicole's fighter wing began recovery operations on disabled Velkari vessels. The ships weren't being destroyed anymore. They were being captured, their crews taken prisoner for interrogation and study. Humanity wanted to understand everything about the Dominion, their territory, their vassals, their weaknesses. Because this war wasn't over, it was just beginning. "We have a problem," Kate Rogers reported from Mars Command. "Long-range sensors are picking up additional contacts. Multiple contacts, jumping in at extreme range." Jack felt his blood chill. "How many?" 15 fleets. Minimum strength 200 vessels each. They're positioning around the solar system in a blockade formation. "Sir, this isn't a conquest force anymore. They're trying to contain us." The tactical display updated with nightmare efficiency. 3,000 Velkari warships surrounded Earth's solar system in a sphere formation, maintaining distance outside the range of human weapons. They weren't attacking, they were waiting. A new transmission arrived. This time it came from a Velkari that introduced itself as High Executor Valm Kesh, Supreme Commander of the Dominion's military forces. Its 4 eyes stared into the camera with something between respect and hatred. "Humans," it said in perfect Earth standard, "you have demonstrated combat capability beyond our initial assessment. You have destroyed 2 of our fleets with minimal losses. This is unprecedented in Dominion history. Therefore, we offer terms." Jack listened, his expression unreadable. "Surrender your weapons technology. Submit to Dominion authority. Your species will be granted vassal status with limited autonomy. You will provide military support to Dominion operations in exchange for protection and trade benefits. Refuse, and we will collapse your sun. The technology exists. We have used it 17 times on species that refused compliance. You have one standard cycle to respond?" The transmission ended. Torres looked at Jack with wide eyes. "Can they actually do that?" "Collapse the sun, Chen?" Jack asked. The scientist's voice came through heavy with exhaustion. "Theoretically, yes. It would require enormous energy expenditure and precise gravitational manipulation, but it's possible. They could turn our sun into a neutron star or trigger premature supernova. Either way, we all die." The bridge went silent. Around Earth, defense platforms hummed with deadly potential, but none of them could stop a sun from collapsing. Humanity had prepared for invasion, for orbital bombardment, for ground assault. They hadn't prepared for cosmic-scale genocide. "What do we do?" Kate asked quietly. Jack Morrison looked at the display showing 3,000 enemy vessels surrounding humanity's home. He thought about the millions already dead. He thought about the weapons humanity had built in secret. He thought about the hunters still tearing apart the trapped fleet inside the solar system. Then he smiled, and it was not a kind expression. "We taught them to fear us in our home system," he said. "Now we teach them to fear us everywhere else. Activate Protocol Prometheus. We're taking this war to them. Earth's retaliation was so brutal, the stars fell silent FAIDITXT protocol. Prometheus had one simple objective. If humanity couldn't win defensively, they would win by making the cost of victory unacceptable to everyone." Across the solar system, every human vessel, every station, every armed platform activated drives that had been built for this exact scenario. They were colony ships in reverse, designed not to settle new worlds, but to spread humanity's wrath across the galaxy faster than any enemy could respond. Jack Morrison broadcast one final message to the Valkyrie blockade. "You threatened our sun. You think that scares us into submission. You're wrong. If Earth dies, we've already seeded 40,000 autonomous war machines across the galaxy. They're programmed with one directive: find Valkyrie worlds and return the favor. Every colony, every station, every populated system you control. They'll collapse your suns one by one until your entire civilization is ash." It was a bluff. Humanity didn't have 40,000 relativistic weapons deployed. They had 60,000. High Executor Valankesh received the message aboard its command dreadnought. For the first time in 4,000 years of Dominion history, a military commander faced a choice that had no winning option. Attack Earth and trigger mutual extinction, retreat and admit defeat to a species that should have been primitive prey. The Executor made its decision. The blockade fleet began powering down weapons. Dr. Chen watched the readings with disbelief. "They're withdrawing. All 3,000 vessels are jumping out simultaneously." But Jack wasn't celebrating. "Taurus, launch the packages anyway. All of them. 60,000 warheads, each containing compressed matter programmed to destabilize stellar cores, scattered across the galaxy at near light speed. They would take years to reach their targets, but the message was clear. Earth was no longer a victim. It was a threat that could end civilizations." Nicole brought her fighter home to Mars, her Neuralink finally disconnecting after 3 days of constant combat. She found Lisa waiting in the hangar, both of them exhausted beyond words. "Is it over?" Lisa asked. "No," Nicole replied. "It's just starting. We showed them we can fight. Now we have to show them we can hunt." Across human space, construction began on the first true war fleet. Not defensive platforms or orbital weapons, but ships designed to leave the solar system and carry humanity's message to every corner of the galaxy. Leave us alone, or face extinction. The Valkyrie Dominion retreated to their core worlds, broadcasting warnings to every spacefaring civilization they knew. The message was simple: avoid the yellow sun. The species there doesn't negotiate, it doesn't submit. It retaliates with weapons that violate natural law. Within a year, Earth's solar system was declared a forbidden zone by 6 major galactic powers. Trade routes were redirected. Exploration missions were canceled. The stars around Sol went quiet as every civilization decided that humanity was better left undisturbed. Jack Morrison stood in the memorial built for the millions who died in the initial attack. Their names were carved into black stone that stretched for miles. He placed his hand on the wall and made a silent promise. Never again would humanity be caught unprepared. Never again would they be considered prey. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Earth had answered invasion with apocalyptic fury, and the scars would last for generations. Some civilizations called humanity monsters. Others called them the sleeping giant that should never have been awakened. Jack called them survivors. And somewhere in the dark between the stars, 60,000 weapons continued their patient journey toward Valkyrie space. A promise that humanity's memory was long, and their capacity for vengeance was infinite. The war was over. The silence had begun. And in that silence, humanity prepared for the day